All right. I guess it's 5:04. I think we can get into it a bit. So basically, I was planning because it's like I was very involved. No, okay, I was not involved. I got myself a bit involved with the core team that's currently working on getting Albatross Testnet to run in a way that I'm constantly asking Sebastian, hey, what's going on? What's the status? What are you working on? What's the current bugs that you're chasing? And in my opinion, that was interesting and very interesting. And I always thought that like people in the dev chats are always asking how it's going, what's going on, checking the GitHub repository. New branch has been merged. How's it going now? And so I just thought that Sebastian and Sergio, because those are currently the main forces behind the testnet, and Janosch also, but he's not here. They can just talk about the journey so far, basically from when they took over all the different modules from the different developers, and try to get them to play nice together, and what kind of issues they run into and how they approached those problems and where it's going now.
Also, Chuck is wanting to speak. Maybe he actually has a question to start with or something.
Should we start with a question? Should we check?
I mean, if he has one, I don't know.
Hey, Maestro.
Oh wait. Hey, hello.
Hey.
I never used this this application, so I probably clicked the wrong button, but so I have no question for now. But
all right.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so I guess starting like mid-December, like roughly a week before Christmas, is basically me getting all kinds of components and like being able to assemble the client and have it run and see if it actually does something. And that is obviously a quite interesting point in time to put all the work that we did over a quite long period of time together in like one piece of executable, I guess. And also, as most people who do software development know, that is not going to go smoothly in 99% of the times. So it did not, and there was a lot of small things which need adjusting. And as I, in particular, maybe Sergio can speak for himself after me as well. I, in particular, have not worked on every piece of code that is in there, right? I have only worked on like a handful of selected topics in there. And now debugging all this stuff obviously leads me all throughout our code base and needs me to understand, at least to some extent, what everything is doing. So that was quite an interesting journey to find some of the more obscure kind of things. And yeah, definitely quite some work, especially the network with all its async async nature. Obviously is quite difficult to debug, especially if you're not looking for something that actually went wrong, but if you are looking for something that is missing or something that you would expect to happen, but it doesn't, and then it is quite hard to find out why it doesn't, where it doesn't happen, and these are, at least from my experience so far, these are the hardest to find. And I actually found one of them yesterday, but we'll maybe talk about that a little bit later. Maybe Sergio can like chip in a little bit here.
Yeah, so maybe it was around August, September when we first integrated Nimiq into the Albatross code, and that was an effort that was mainly done by Philip. But yeah, I was mainly involved in a couple of network behaviors that the network required. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey once everything was starting to kind of come up together, and especially because the whole architecture of the P2P integration was like redesigned by Janusz. So a lot of things changed in that period of time, but they changed so fast. So now that we are, well, kind of seeing how everything's playing together, it kind of required us to re-understand the whole network layer and everything. So it's been fun. It's been frustrating at times, but yeah, well, I don't know. It's been quite a challenge for sure, especially because of what Basti is saying, that there are a lot of bugs that are just stuff missing, and those are really hard to find. Like when you have unknowns, that's something that's really hard to find. So yeah, it's pretty much how we started our bug bounty hunting.
Could you give an example, like from the past weeks, something that where you were stuck, and then how to figure it out, and where the issue in the end actually was?
So I can actually give a little example. Like when I got to the Nerd Temple and saw Basti trying to fight against the nodes not connecting, one of the things that he realized is that we were using wrong addresses to well, actually not wrong addresses, wrong TCP ports to ping the remote nodes, and that was kind of strange because at least from my understanding of the code, that everything was happening well. Like we were recording every good address once we discover an IP, and so you could get like a node 1 connecting to another remote nodes, but they weren't connected among themselves. So then we kind of had to figure out why we weren't getting the correct listener addresses, and kind of go back from there to realize how we were exchanging the peer information. So that was well, we fixed that issue. It wasn't that hard to fix. That was like a little bit of evidence that something was requiring a little more attention going into how we were exchanging the peer information. And actually now I'm interested in hearing about what Basti found yesterday, because I bet that's something related to that.
Yeah, it is. But one other thing that I found also to be quite interesting is on startup for the nodes. Obviously, the setup that I am running, the nodes are starting up pretty much immediately after each other. So the first node is started and is not even like finished spooling up yet. Then the other node is already trying to connect to it. And that leads to quite some race conditions with nodes not having their event handlers and listeners set up properly, while other nodes are already sending messages, which are then dropped because there's no one listening for them, which then leads to a timeout, and the nodes ultimately end up not being connected. So there's also something which requires quite some debugging to actually find what is going on here, and that is something that Janos is now working on. Basically, I had a lengthy call with him, like I want to say like 4 days ago, where I explained the problem in detail. I also had a very, very hacky fix for it, just to make me able to proceed with finding other stuff down the line, so that he could basically work on fixing this properly while I can already progress further and see what else might break. And one thing that then kept me occupied for a little bit of time is that our nodes weren't exchanging peer information with each other, which I wasn't sure why, because they really should. Everything looked like they really should, like send their information amongst. So once everybody is connected to the seed node, they obviously don't know about each other, but only about the seed node. And the seed node now has to distribute the address information of these peers amongst these peers. And that is exactly what was not happening, and which is required to have them connect to each other. And the issue is actually that these nodes do all consider themselves seed nodes, and seed nodes address information is not shared because it is considered public knowledge. So everybody is supposed to have this information to begin with.
Sounds like a great edge case again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that is basically me at some point, like commenting out seven digits of code or something, and all of a sudden every peer has a full address book. So yeah, it's most of that is the one that I found yesterday. So today I will probably do the actually connecting for these peers, and that is a huge thing which we now have worked on for quite some time, to have the client actually connect and to establish a network proper with like 5 or 6 clients at least. So that for everything concerning PBFT, or in our case, for the BFT version is Tendermint, for that to run and to also have the opportunity to fail reasonably well. So I guess we will probably ultimately end up running something like 9 nodes. Yeah, and I'm really curious on how this is now going once these nodes are connected. There's, from my point of view, there's reasonable hope that the network will just establish consensus amongst it and start producing blocks. Because the node that is actually having consensus, which is the seed node, that one actually does start producing blocks. So it is kind of reasonable to assume that once the other nodes, which are the next block producers, can establish consensus by having enough peers, that they would also like pick up and produce their blocks likewise, which would be very, very cool. And kind of what this is all about, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that would be a really big moment.
And I think that this part where the validators correctly produce blocks was already proven before Christmas, right? You posted this GIF, or posted this GIF forwarded from you about actually producing microblocks and macroblocks and election blocks.
Yeah.
And so that worked in memory, and now so this part of the step should work once the nodes actually detect that they have consensus.
Exactly.
You're saying we are very close.
Yeah, absolutely. So the network is basically what got done last. So it's basically the test coverage is comparative in comparison to, for example, the validator, which also does not have the best test coverage yet. So we will probably expand on that quite extensively as well. That is basically where we currently find most of the issues. The production of the chain and also the view changing of block producers which are not online or something, these issues have been tested before in sort of a different setup, where there is no actual network layer, but all the messages are just handed around via streams. But now introducing the network layer, that obviously has some issues in and of itself, like how do peers connect to each other, how do they actually discover addresses, and stuff like that. This is also where I'm not the most proficient because I have not actually worked on this. But yeah, that certainly is a bigger topic. And but once these issues in the network are done, which I hope to get to today or tomorrow, there's me having another go at hopefully having a running net.
Sounds great. So next step then, when you have a running Docker, it would be like as a next step, as in next week probably, if it works, have the dev network right inside, like internally. I can probably not take part of that anymore from back here, right? From back in Europe.
Generally speaking, you should be. Like everybody should be. That is basically
that's the public testnet. Yeah, but I mean, like you said, like there's going to be an internal.
Yes, and you should probably be able to connect to that one too. So yeah, that would be the idea at least. So I will probably set up. So after this is working and we have the local version running to, I guess, our satisfaction. We will probably set up maybe my computer or somebody else's computer and like just set it up as if it was a seed node for an actual network. And then we will have like our team members each connect to it and like introducing an actual network delay, and like see what that does to all of these things, because there might also be race conditions concerning that. So it makes a lot of sense to actually have this run at least for a day or two to see how it works and actually like look at the clients and really look at what they are doing. And after that is when we are probably going to look into having actual seed nodes for the testnet setup and opening it up.
Okay, sounds great. I see a few questions. I got 2 questions already in the chat. One from Nimiq Love. If you want to raise your hand, if you want to request speaking, I can also bring you up. You can ask in person if you have a microphone. Otherwise, he's asking if we will have an incentivized testnet. And I don't know even exactly what that means, but maybe Sebastian knows.
I'm not familiar if that term is something that is like something very specific, but I do assume that it is something along the lines of the stuff that you do in testnet actually has some meaningful impact on what is later going on in mainnet, which currently, as far as I know, we do not plan to have, if that is the question.
Yeah, sounds about right. Right, let's hear Maestro.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
Are all the chain setting decided? What I mean by that is the block size and all the settings already set in stone, or are you still deciding that?
So not everything is set in stone. We do have rough ballpark numbers for most of them, but really nothing is set in stone yet, because the live performance is something that we really need to assess until we can make like a well-educated decision on that. So I would say that probably while we are doing this dev sort of version of the net, where we like have just team members connect to it and see how it runs, we will probably also experiment with quite some values, mostly how long are epochs, how long are batches, how big are blocks, and then see what kind of performance we can get out of this. Because for block size, there's like a couple of things. As the bigger you make the block, the less quick it becomes to compute. So there's probably going to be a sweet spot somewhere where you can basically get the best throughputs for it. But as far as I am aware, none of the values are final, completely final yet. And we will probably have a look at it. The ballpark for epochs and batches, though, that epochs are probably going to be somewhere around a day. And
24 hours, right? Because
yeah,
of the nano sync needs also
yeah, exactly.
some time.
Exactly. That is because the zero knowledge proof generator takes, I think, roughly 10 hours. And to have some buffer in there, I think we are looking at probably around 24 hours for the epochs. And for the batches, we are thinking about like something between 5 and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that are some of the numbers floating around currently. As most of you know, the block size currently is 100 kilobytes. I think we might increase that a little bit, but for now, this is probably how we will start the testnet. And then see how it goes. Maybe do some experiments with like bigger blocks and see how the performance can keep up.
Yeah, I did some napkin math with Stefan or the local CM, and if you do 100 kilobytes of data, you can roughly have 774 or something, including the block header, as transactions, and that's only the basic one. So in order to get more than 1,000 transactions per second, you need at least like 200 or something, because you have also transactions for staking and stuff, right? And election blocks and other blocks in between. So for actually more than 1,000 transactions per second, we think you need at least 200 kilobytes. So maybe it's good to test that on a DevNet for the performance-wise.
Yeah, definitely. So I do think that we will probably experiment with block size. And then something that also is on the road for sure is like have actual like optimizations for the processing of these blocks, because that is one of the biggest bottlenecks, of course.
Yeah. And how hard is it to do a soft fork for Nimiq 2.0? For example, if you want to change something in the past, I think if you want to change something big in Nimiq 1.0, it would be quite a hassle to upgrade everything. Will it be easier in 2.0?
So a soft fork generally is probably not a huge deal. Hard forking also obviously is always a pretty huge deal. I think I've not looked at this. Also, there's no experience yet, because we have not done any patches in that regard so far. So, actually, Bruno is also here. Hey, Bruno. Come to the speakers.
The man, the legend himself.
Yeah. And Matteo is here.
I'm also here.
You're also there.
No, I'm here.
Yeah, Bruno, if you're listening, if you want to speak, you can click on the little...
he might also not want to speak.
Speak icon, and then I can let you...
There he goes. Yeah, he only came to listen. Okay.
So I have a little concern about archival node. We did some napkin math on that as well. If, for example, if you have a 200 kilobyte block size, an archival node will have several terabytes in 1 year. If you have the full speed of the network and you 24/7 get 1,000 transactions per second, is there something in the lines to get that down, or is there some incentive to run an archival node?
That is something that I do not know. It is reasonable to assume, though, that you will not run like every block at full capacity. At least now it is.
Understandable. But...
So that is not really something that in the beginning will come up, and obviously archival nodes are going to be quite huge in terms of space requirements. If there are like 1,000 transactions per second, that will require a huge amount of data storage to actually like store, if you want to store them for eternity perpetually. That is just going to like require a lot of storage. There is probably, I want to say that there is likely going to be optimizations that can be made, but that is also something that I am not knowledgeable about to like say how that would be done. And it's also something that I have not looked into at all so far.
I had a interesting conversation about this, I think with Marvin, I don't remember exactly, like last week, that yes, archival node will require lots of space, and mostly block explorers or other history-related services will run it. But what could be imagined is that actually this becomes a service, and if you want to access data that is very old on the blockchain, it could be paid for, and the service could require you to pay a little bit of NIM to get the information from, I don't know, 4 years ago, which usually is not available anymore.
Yeah, it is your node after all, right? So you can basically do how you like.
Yeah, I understand, but what I mean is if you want to sync from the start, you need to connect to archival nodes, because on how I understand it for now, if you run a full node, for example, a validator, you only need the last epoch, and you can probably prune everything below the last epoch because you don't actually need it. So only the newest information for a chain or the older than one epoch will be available as on an archival node. So they will be probably pretty important. And there's still a little incentive to run one because you need to connect to an archival node if you want to, for example, get your wallet data and stuff, of course. So what is the incentive to run one?
I think there's also a difference between keeping transactions and keeping blocks itself, right? So the blocks itself, the micro blocks, can be deleted probably, but transactions could be kept for longer.
I didn't know there was an option. Sorry.
So I think what we do is we are not storing the blocks. So there's not, as far as I know, but that is really something that I also did not work on. But as far as I know, the history node will basically save the election blocks, and it will save the state transitions between them, which are smaller than the blocks would be, because all the headers basically stop appearing. So that is saving some space for sure. But when it comes to the incentive, I also really don't know about that. Might be something to think about for sure. We'll bring it up.
Yeah, I saw this chat to talk with Sebastian. I brought Sebastian and Sergio in because they're currently working on the DevNet testnet with the networking, and all the bigger philosophical questions are probably not the exact topic here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries. It's still an interesting question. It's just like we don't know at least we here in this chat don't know the answer yet.
So will you be, because you were talking about running validator nodes and seed nodes, like archival node, I guess, inside Docker, will you guys provide Docker containers for that, for people to use? Or?
So I am currently using Docker containers to test this setup. I do also plan on giving us better tools to write tests for the network in particular and the validator, to basically set up dummy nodes, proper nodes, but with a dummy network beneath it, so that you can write more targeted tests. But generally speaking, I am using a Dockerized setup at the moment, and we will probably also make this available to the public. You could right now also build your Docker image yourself, but we will probably just have the Docker image be provided somewhere.
Yeah, we are
native, already built binary right in the Docker, and then just download and run it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
external config and external database.
Yeah, exactly. We worked on that already a little bit, so it works. But for people that have not much knowledge, it would be easy to run a container, of course, or an image that's just a public repo, and then they just pull and it works. So it would help the community, I think.
Yeah, I think we will. We are very likely to provide something like it.
I was talking a lot. Maybe we can give someone else an opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Maestro.
Yeah,
no problem.
Thanks very much.
No problem.
Nimiq Love also posted another question in the chat. If we got to a conclusion regarding the problem of validators, there were not many people will want to be validators, since the staking is going to be really easy, ? I think this was discussed in the Telegram groups for some time ago, and Bruno also commented on that in the discussion. So I think if he's currently only here to listen, then this is not a topic for this area, except if Sebastian or Sergio wants to want to chime in for the question about validators and incentives for validators?
Well, I mean, the incentive to be a validator are, I think, pretty clear, right? You are not going to have to pay another validator for his work, right? So that is something that is probably pretty clear. However, it's obviously an economic discussion here about like the stuff, the money that you put in to actually run the validator in comparison to the money that you get out. So as long as that is like beneficial, I think it still makes sense to run a validator. But I have not talked about this like a lot. I would say that I would probably like to run a validator.
But you also like the tech factor of it, right? You're not,
of course,
you're not really doing it because you're
of course.
saving them.
I'm not doing it from a purely ecological point of view, I guess, but I think even from a ecological point of view, it should make sense to do it.
Well, I'm thinking about setting up a validator as a service kind of service. And I did some napkin math again. It turns out there are 512 slots for current epoch for 24 hours of the epoch, if we chose to do 24 hours. In that slot, you probably need a lot of NIM to be profitable validator on the current price. So if the price goes up, it's way more incentivized to get a validator if the pool fee is pretty high. So if the pool fee is really low, then you have little incentive to run your own validator because you need 24-hour uptime, that kind of stuff. And we also discussed that there will be some kind of way to rank validators if they're good or bad. And it's easier for normal people, of course, to say, well, I just want to stake my money, so I will put it on a validator that is the highest ranking, and then I have not to do anything. But I think for developers and people that kind of tech savvy, it makes sense to run a validator if they have enough amount of NIM to be relevant. So if you have only 1K, you probably won't be relevant for a while because it will take a long time before you could elect it. So that's my 2 cents about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess part of the incentives of having your own validator is that you can, and that is also something that we will provide information on in the future. You can make yourself basically known to the world as somebody who you could stake for, right? So any other Nimiq stakeholder who wants to stake his NIM but doesn't want to run his own validator could be choosing you and increasing basically your validation power or your staking with regards to the total amount staked. So that is also something that you would then probably benefit from just running the validator. So,
well, if someone is delegating a stake to your validator, you need to pay him manually, if I understand correctly. So
the client will not do it. That is true. The client itself will not do it. The validator itself will not do it.
Exactly.
But you will probably be running some validator pool software in the background as well, like communicating with the client over RPC and dealing with that in an automated kind of way.
Yeah, but then you have a pool, of course. So if you want a pure validator, delegating a stake to the validator will only help the guy running the validator, the person running the validator. He will get the reward. So he needs to manually distribute.
Yes, but that is the same for pools, right? A validator.
Yeah, exactly. You just for a pool, if anyone is interested, the pool is just a validator with extra software around it.
Exactly. Okay. And you can choose to do that as a validator. You can always choose to do that. And if you do, your stake might be bigger than just what you personally can stake. And that is also leading to you like gaining some benefit out of it. But as Sergio said, there is a thread on our community forum. So everybody interested, head on over there and like voice your opinions. Always much appreciated.
Yeah, but I think what my answer was getting to is that it only makes sense to have to run your validator if you have around 1/512th of the currently staked volume to be actually able to be selected for a slot in an epoch. Which then, when you have a slot, then you have a high chance of then you have a pretty stable amount of blocks that you're going to produce, most likely in this epoch. I'm just calculating it here. Like you have 86,000 seconds per day, and then that is divided by the 512 slots.
You are not rewarded for the blocks that you produce. You are rewarded for the slots that you hold. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, that's true. But you still need to produce the blocks to not be slashed.
Well, if they come up, yes, but if they never come up, then you are still good to go. So
yeah, okay. So if by chance your slot does never get chosen for the epoch, then
exactly. So once you got your slot, there is no more basically chance or luck involved. As long as you do your job as a validator, you do get your fair cut.
Yeah, so you need to be chosen to be in an epoch, and you have 512 slots to fill. So you need to be at least one of the 512 slots. So you need a decent amount of NIM to be chosen. Otherwise, your luck is you need to have a pretty high chance of luck to be chosen as validator. And 24 hours for an epoch is pretty long. So you only have 365 chances a year to get even chosen to be in an epoch. So if you have only 1k NIM, you probably will never get chosen. You will never have a return as what you expect.
There will probably be like, it can be tracked probably in some validator explorer or something, can be tracked what the minimum is right now is required to be picked. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so
with a stake this big, it certainly makes a lot more sense to delegate it to some existing validator and not creating your own.
Yeah.
So
there's a limit. Yeah.
Maybe you would expect, or maybe you have a bunch of friends who also have NIM and who kind of want to delegate the NIM and who are maybe also already delegating the NIM to some other validator. And maybe you can convince them to change to your validator so that you can actually reach the threshold. So, and then it makes sense again. Then you can do it.
Yes, I guess so. But that's was something we need to test in the
that will be tested.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe this is not the right question, but I'm curious. Are you going to try to do from the current testnet to the next upcoming testnet a transition to move all accounts and balances over?
That is a very good question, I think. So this is talking about basically transition from 1.0 to 2.0 and like the update mechanism basically.
Yes.
And yeah, and I do think that we are probably going to do a test run or two with this and see how it works. But I don't know if that necessarily has to go on the actual testnet as it currently runs for 1.0. We will probably at some point, I mean, obviously we will transition the testnet to 2.0 at some point as well. But I think even before that, we will probably do some dry runs during the transition process and like testing this.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
I heard also from Philip and Bruno that there will be at least one testnet reboot and like fresh start with new fixes, and there's also going to be like a hard fork because some things will be developed that are not in yet for the initial version. So there will be some more testnet iterations. Awesome.
Yeah, I got 26 million testnet coins, so I thought I could take
You might want to use those for staking, right?
Exactly, I can get all 512 slots on the testnet. I see what happens.
Yeah, maybe the testnet coin distribution is not very representative of the mainnet coin distribution.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we can see if we can try that with the testnet accounts tree. Yes.
And also there's Burjo wanting to give his opinion as well.
Yeah, I think let's see what he has to say.
Hi guys, what are you guys talking about?
Right, we are developers of the Nimiq blockchain, and we're talking about our upcoming proof of stake testnet.
What language you use for building it?
The new version is built in Rust with the Rust.
Oh, cool!
And going to be compatible with JavaScript.
Why Rust chosen for you to use?
Sorry, say it again.
Why you choose Rust?
Why did you choose Rust, Sebastian?
I wasn't around for when we picked Rust, but as far as I can tell, we picked it because it's obviously a very performant language that eliminates a lot of culprits that other languages on that level have, like C or something, where memory safety is not a thing, and you basically segfault your code every once in a while, which with Rust is just not happening, and that makes it a lot better to develop on, or like easier to debug and to argue about.
How to
help or how to have what?
How to have the server for the blockchain? Like there is a server like for managing log.
Oh, a server? You're talking about a server? How to have a server for the blockchain? You can
transaction log. Yeah.
I don't really understand.
And how about the wallet?
Yes. What about the wallet?
How do I install it?
Okay, you don't need to install the wallet. You can just go to nimiq.com.
Oh my god, cool.
And click on the create account button in the top right, and that gets you to the browser wallet. We have a browser wallet that runs directly in your browser, connects natively to Nimiq.
Cool. So it's web-based.
Yes, exactly. You can do everything client-side.
I go to the site right now.
Okay. Right, next up is Lorenzo N. Let's see if he's still online and waiting to speak.
Yeah, sorry, I'm working right now, but
no, that's fine. What are you working on? Maybe he's in a meeting with other people. Right, let's see if he comes back.
Yeah, I'm doing some backend work.
Do you have a question for us?
And I wasn't paying that much attention, so what are you doing?
So, do you know what Nimiq is?
No, I don't know.
In that case, this is probably not the talk for you. We're talking about Nimiq blockchain. Right. Is there any other technical or like test questions about the testnet, about our current progress from our community here? See some faces that I know. Otherwise, yeah, I guess Sebastian and Sergio, if you have any other anecdotes, if you other interesting findings that you had. I remember, Sebastian, we debugged this issue with the non-serializable messages on the couch, and then suddenly you had this epiphany.
Yeah, that was quite funny too. where basically all of a sudden like deserialization errors would show up. So I would fix like a very, very small bug, which I thought was completely unrelated to this. But all of a sudden, like a huge chunk of like undeserializable bytes show up. And I'm like really thinking about like what is that kind of doing. And then in the end, it turns out that this is just the chunking mechanism that basically breaks these messages apart into like multiple chunks, and not recognizing that that this is actually not a separate message, but a continuation of the previous one, which is also funny because that only worked because the previous one also like got crafted very specifically so that that would actually work. And yeah, it was like messy, but in the end, also a very, very easy fix. I think it was like a line or so, as it usually is. The fixes are very small, but they are like quite hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, that was a state, right? The deserializer state or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It was cleared between messages,
yeah.
so it just
It
tried to deserialize different messages for another type, or for the first type that appeared, and then obviously that didn't work. So lots of garbage basically being ignored. Yeah, that was
right. It would do for the first message ever encountered. It would read and deserialize the header, and then it would keep that header for every
like the message type.
Yeah, exactly. For every message coming in after that, which obviously can't work because the messages are very, very different and also have different headers, which are different sizes too. So that that kind of broke everything. Aside from that single one message type, every other message would end up not being deserializable. And yeah, that was not ideal. But then resetting the state would do the trick. It's a line of code and everything works again.
Yeah, it's always the little things. But yeah, so many little things, and then only after you fix the one little thing, it continues, and you can see the next little thing. It's like it's an endless, or it could be an endless corridor, but you only see the next door when you open the.
Well, it can't really be endless, I would say, because theoretically speaking, there can only be a finite amount of things, right? So I guess every time where I find something and fix it, I do know that we got even a little bit closer. And but yeah, the nature of the bugs only showing up after you fixed one is a bit difficult, right? Because you can like really not take a look in the future, really.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Sebastian, I made you also moderator, by the way. I think you should now be able to move people up also when clicking on them and then move to speaker. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, maybe I talk too much in here, but someone else was willing to speak. Do you guys need help from the community for anything?
I mean, there's always, as this is an open source project, right, and also like an open protocol, every bit of participation is always much appreciated. And like basically every capacity that you kind of want to contribute is always a very nice sight to be seen. I would not necessarily like put a finger on something that urgently needs help, but if you find something that you think would be cool for Nimiq to have, like feel free to approach us anytime and like pitch us the idea. We might even help out if we can, and always all the things, basically everything that you can imagine. It's always great.
I have a question.
Yes, when no, I'm kidding. Actually, well, as you probably saw, I'm gathering questions from the community to do a video. And Porcacho, I don't think he's around, but Porcacho had an interesting question. Maybe we can discuss it here quickly, and also I get some insight into to do my video. But he asked, a smart contract and DeFi, liquidity provider, lend, borrow, is something achievable by Nimiq? So is it too far-fetched to discuss in this call, or maybe what do you guys think? Have you considered that? I know a little bit part of the discussion that we've had internally, that Nimiq could, via Oasis, trigger smart contracts based on Ethereum, and that way participate in some kind of DeFi platform. I imagine what he says is it would be cool to be able to lend, borrow, like compound type of thing with Nimiq. So this, because I noticed that you have a couple of minutes left, I wanted to do this.
So generally speaking, we, as it currently stands, we, at least to my knowledge, have no concrete plans of going to expand a lot on the smart contract side of things. That might change in the future, and it's not set in stone at all, but the current focus is not on increasing the smart contract capabilities. But with other tools in place, namely Oasis, you can obviously go the Ethereum route, which provides a lot of things in that regard. But yeah, currently, and maybe if Bruno wants to, he can chip in, because I read a proposal from him. The smart contract kind of thing is not exactly on the highest priorities right now.
Hey, Bruno. First need to unmute, and then you can, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, about the smart contracts, what we might have at a given point is something more similar to Bitcoin scripts that could probably be near, but full-fledged like Ethereum smart contracts, I don't see that happening. What you need to build a payment coin and what you need to build a smart contract coin are very different. So it would be actually difficult to join the two objectives in one. And since we are trying to build a payment system, we probably won't be able to actually do smart contracts, at least the way you imagine them in Ethereum.
Yeah. I think there was also some talk of some kind of simplified token thingy, but I think that was very abstract.
I don't remember that. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think I actually have a question in that line also from the community. What Soren is referring to, I think, is like a wrapped version of NIM in the Ethereum blockchain. Then that would allow people to do stuff with this wrapped NIM, which is basically what Porcacho is asking. Like, with a wrapped version of NIM in the Ethereum blockchain, then we can add it or list it in Uniswap, for example, and allow people to become liquidity providers, also participate in DeFi, like lending, borrowing, using compound.
Okay, I see. Well, I guess that would be possible. If you can wrap Bitcoin and other coins, you could certainly wrap Nimiq. I'm not very aware of the requirements to wrap a coin in Ethereum, but
a while ago, Richie, and it was very unclear how that works logistically and legally, and who would be running this wrapped coin, and most likely not something that Nimiq can do itself.
Very well aware of that, Soren, don't worry. Just wanted to share what we are talking about is about that topic, and that there's such a question.
Right. I think I meant actually some kind of simplified token, aka script thingy on Nimiq, which I think came up at some point, but it might just have been an idea and not some kind of specific thing. Right. Maestro, do you still want to talk? You want to say something? Talk about things?
Yeah, I was like, okay, let's move on. But No, I don't have further question for this moment. No, thanks. Thank for all the hard work. No.
Lorenzo is no longer here.
No, he left, sadly.
Okay.
Right. Then everybody who wants to come on stage can come on stage for the final minutes. Everybody raise your hands. Everybody request to speak, and then you can say hello. Nobody wants to? Timo, don't you have a microphone? Let's come up on stage. Oh, no, he left. Okay. Right. I think, yeah. Thank you very much, Sergio and Sebastian.
There's actually a question in chat.
All right. Yeah. How do you guys expect Nimiq.js will go after the 2.0?
So that is really something that I personally have not given a lot of thought. I am very strictly focused on Nimiq 2.0. The reality is, though, that like a blockchain just is there, and as long as people are mining it, it will still be there. If that is what you're even talking about, because right now, like, it looks like you are talking about whether or not there will be JavaScript bindings and like a node for the browser. And I want to say that there will be, and also work on bringing that or enabling that has already begun.
Yes, yeah. So exactly, I thought the question was about how Nimiq 1.0 will continue, but like afterwards it says like with the WASM code. I think there's already people. Is there someone working on the WASM compatibility right now?
No, the WASM itself, I think, is so far not started, but will be pretty soon, I think. Jeff is likely going to be working on that soon. But what has already begun is work on the nanosync, which Bruno is working on, and yeah.
Right, which is a requirement for browsers anyway. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the new client API that Marvin introduced in the core.js a while ago, I think this was meant to be basically to use the same API for Nimiq 2.0, also in the JavaScript library, in the wrapper, basically, and there will probably be new functionality also and extended. But we are trying to make it as simple as right now with the JavaScript to also run from JavaScript for Nimiq 2.0.
Yeah, as far as I know, the API is not supposed to change.
Yeah, exactly. Just being
aside from maybe adding stuff specific to staking, and obviously there needs to be stuff for that. But generally speaking, the API should stay more.
Exactly. I think even the current transaction formats are going to stay the same. There will be a new transaction format, which is the signaling transaction, which is used for staking and stuff. And the blocks, I think, are also mostly the same, the micro blocks. There might be some additional flags, though, some new fields. But I think even most of the code that works with transactions will be mostly be able to be reused, as far as I know currently. So that would be very exciting, also for us front-end guys, to integrate it. And also interesting, actually, maybe that's a question for Bruno. I don't know how that will work in the Nano consensus, but will the Nano nodes actually get every single block like it does now, like get the height changed, or will it only get like transaction subscriptions and then only macro blocks? Do you know?
Sorry, could you do the question again? I couldn't hear.
Also, Sergio, could you mute yourself, maybe?
Yeah, Sergio has a bit of background noise.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So my question is basically, as a wallet and front-end developer, will the Nano nodes that run in the browser, will they still get events for each individual block, so I can display basically the current block height? Or is that too much because it's an event every second on average? And will I just get transaction subscriptions like I do now?
Well, I'm still not doing the consensus part of it. I'm writing the blockchain for the Nano nodes, but the idea is that I would get each micro block header. So
Okay.
You sync, and then you'd get the headers. Yes.
And every new one also,
Mm-hmm.
which could also be a bit of data, right? It's like much more data than for the Nimiq 1.0 currently.
Well, just the headers, though. They're a bit small.
Okay.
It's probably about, I want to say 120 bytes per header, maybe 150 bytes per header, something like that. So it's not.
Okay, so that's not much more than a ping then, I guess. Like.
No, it's decent. It's mostly the signature on the block, otherwise.
Okay, that sounds good. Because I was wondering if we could actually display the current speed of the blockchain in the browser with Node, but it seems like we can then, when we get the headers. Great, that's amazing. Okay, if there's no other questions, no one is asking in the chat either, then I think. Oh yeah, so Stefan is asking about the Validator Explorer. And I think this is something that, Bruno, that you also worked on for the idea of the validator trust score and stuff.
Yeah, me and Sebastian. Well, I did the validator trust score. Yeah, the idea is to get several properties, I guess, of the validator: the size, the age, and the uptime, basically, and condense it into a single number so that you can display in the wallet, the rating for the validator. It's a simple formula. It's going to be open source anyways. And the Explorer itself, the idea would be to store all available on-chain information about validators so that people can, explore, I guess, and make educated guesses and decisions on which validator to choose. It's not too different from a block explorer. As I said, it has validators.
Yeah. I think we are trying to get the validator explorer through the building that through the Nimiq, the Nimiq beta, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, it will be.
Find people who are going to build that.
It is on progress now.
Yes.
Being built.
There will be a proposal and a description of it.
Yes.
Amazing. Stefan, does it answer your question? Or does it answer your...
And if not, ask more specific question.
Okay, cool. Now he says, yes, that's fine. Cool. I guess we can, if there are any more questions from the community, they can also be asked in the channels, in Telegram, or on Discord, and we will get to them asynchronously. Cool.
Thank you guys very much for your time and to speak to us.
Yeah.
And be so transparent.
Thank you for listening to us,
Yeah.
to our rambling. Cool. Yeah, I would see if hopefully the recording went well, and I will upload it. I'll get it uploaded somewhere so people can listen to it afterwards also.
Right, excellent. Thanks, Johan, for taking care of this.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was
Thank you.
Very interesting for me also. Thank you very much, and let's see when we do this again.
Yep. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
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 Bye bye. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.